Thomas Chen had everything money could buy, but tonight he felt emptier than ever. At 52, he owned 3 companies, lived in a penthouse that cost more than most people made in 10 years, and drove cars that turned heads wherever he went. Yet walking out of his glass office tower on this cold November evening, he couldn't shake the feeling that something important was missing from his life. The wind cut through downtown like a knife, sending papers dancing across the sidewalk. Most people hurried past with their heads down, eager to get home to their warm houses. Thomas pulled his expensive coat tighter and walked toward the parking garage where his driver waited. That's when he saw her. A young woman sat against the marble wall of his building, almost hidden in the shadows between 2 large pillars. She couldn't have been more than 20, with long brown hair that looked like it hadn't seen a proper wash in weeks. Her clothes were worn and layered, clearly everything she owned piled on to fight the cold. But what stopped Thomas in his tracks wasn't her appearance. It was what she was doing. She was reading. Under the dim glow of a streetlight, the girl held an old paperback book, completely absorbed in its pages. The wind kept trying to turn the pages for her, but she held it steady with practiced ease. Her lips moved slightly as she read, and Thomas could see her eyes moving back and forth across the lines with genuine interest. Thomas had passed hundreds of homeless people in his lifetime. He'd given money to some, ignored others, and always felt a mixture of guilt and helplessness. But he'd never seen one reading a classic novel like it was the most natural thing in the world. He found himself walking over before he'd even decided to do it. "Excuse me," he said softly, not wanting to startle her. The girl looked up, and Thomas was struck by her eyes. They were a deep green, clear and intelligent. There was no anger in them, no desperation or fear, just a quiet alertness like she was ready for whatever came next. "Yes?" she said, closing the book carefully and using her finger to mark her place. "I'm sorry to interrupt your reading. I was just curious about the book." Thomas glanced down and could see the faded cover. "Jane Eyre. That's quite a story." The girl's face lit up with a small smile. "It really is. I've read it before, but I keep finding new things each time. Charlotte Bronte was amazing at creating characters that feel so real." Thomas blinked. He'd expected a simple answer, maybe just a nod. Instead, this young woman was discussing literature with the passion of a college professor. "You've read it multiple times?" "3 times now," she said, then seemed to catch herself. "I know that probably sounds strange, reading the same book over and over when there are so many others out there. But sometimes when life gets hard, it helps to visit old friends." She gestured to the book like it was a treasured companion. "It doesn't sound strange at all," Thomas said. And he meant it. "I do the same thing with my favorite books. There's something comforting about a story you know will end well." The girl studied his face for a moment, as if trying to figure out if he was being genuine or just making polite conversation. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her because her smile became a little warmer. "I'm Thomas," he said, extending his hand. She hesitated for just a second, then reached out with a hand that was clean but rough from cold weather. "Lily. Nice to meet you, Lily. Are you from around here?" "Sort of," she said, which Thomas understood meant she didn't want to go into details. "What about you? Do you work in this building? I see you come out of here pretty often." Thomas was surprised she'd noticed him. "Yes, I have an office upstairs. Tech consulting. Pretty boring stuff, really." He paused, then pulled out his wallet. "Listen, can I give you something for dinner? There's a good sandwich shop around the corner that stays open late." Lily's expression changed, becoming more guarded. "Thank you, but I don't take handouts." "It's not a handout," Thomas said quickly. "Think of it as payment for the book recommendation. I haven't read Jane Eyre in years. You've reminded me I should pick it up again." "I haven't recommended it yet," Lily said, but there was a hint of amusement in her voice. "What if I told you it was terrible and you shouldn't waste your time?" Thomas laughed, genuinely surprised by her quick wit. "Then I'd probably still read it just to see if you were right." "Well, in that case," Lily said, "I highly recommend it. Charlotte Bronte creates this incredible character in Jane. She's poor, plain, and has nothing going for her by society's standards, but she has this inner strength and dignity that never breaks. No matter what life throws at her, she refuses to be pitied or to compromise her values, even when it would make her life easier." The way Lily described the character made Thomas wonder if she saw something of herself in Jane Eyre. There was a quiet dignity in how Lily carried herself, even in her difficult circumstances. She hadn't asked him for money, hadn't looked at his expensive clothes with envy or resentment. She'd simply been polite and genuine. "That does sound like someone worth reading about," Thomas said. He held out a $20 bill. "For the recommendation, and for helping me remember that good stories are worth revisiting." Lily looked at the money, then back at his face. "You don't have to do this. I know I don't have to. I want to." Thomas kept his voice gentle but firm. "Sometimes we all need a little help, and sometimes helping others helps us too." After a long moment, Lily reached out and took the money. "Thank you. I'll make sure to put it to good use." "I'm sure you will," Thomas said. He started to turn away, then stopped. "Will you be here tomorrow?" "Probably," Lily said with a small shrug. "This is a good spot. Quiet and the light is decent for reading. Well, maybe I'll see you around, and maybe you can tell me about the next book you're reading." "Maybe," Lily said, but she was smiling again. As Thomas walked away toward his car, he found himself thinking about their conversation. In 5 minutes, this young woman had shown more genuine intelligence and character than most of the people in his wealthy social circle showed in an entire evening. She was educated, articulate, and had a way of talking about books that made them come alive. What was someone like that doing living on the streets? The question followed him all the way home to his empty penthouse. That night, as he sat in his leather chair looking out at the city lights, Thomas found himself thinking about inner strength and dignity, about people who refused to be pitied, even when life had knocked them down. He went to his bookshelf and pulled out an old copy of Jane Eyre. As he opened it to the first page, he realized it had been years since he'd felt genuinely curious about another person's story. Maybe tomorrow he'd find out more of Lily's. Thomas couldn't concentrate on work the next day. During his morning meeting with the board of directors, his mind kept drifting to his conversation with Lily. He found himself wondering what she was doing, whether she'd found a warm place to sleep, and if she was still reading Jane Eyre. By lunchtime, he'd made up his mind. He told his assistant he'd be back in an hour and headed downstairs. Lily was there, sitting in the same spot between the marble pillars. But today, instead of reading, she had a small notebook balanced on her knees and was drawing something with intense concentration. Her hand moved across the page with quick, confident strokes. "Back again?" she said without looking up, though Thomas was sure he'd approached quietly. "How did you know it was me?" "Your shoes," she said, glancing down at his expensive leather loafers. "They make a different sound than most people's. Plus, not many people slow down when they walk past me. Most folks speed up." Thomas felt a pang of guilt at how accurate that observation was. "What are you working on there?" Lily held up her notebook, and Thomas's eyebrows shot up in surprise. She'd been drawing the building behind her, his building, but not just a simple sketch. This was a detailed architectural drawing that captured every line and curve of the structure. The proportions were perfect, and she'd even included the play of shadows and light across the glass surface. "This is incredible," Thomas said, genuinely amazed. "Are you an artist?" Lily shrugged, closing the notebook. "I just like to draw things that catch my eye. Your building has interesting lines. The way the glass reflects the sky makes it look different at every hour of the day." "Can I see the rest?" Thomas asked. Lily hesitated, then opened the notebook again. Thomas found himself looking at page after page of remarkable drawings. Street scenes, people waiting for buses, pigeons fighting over scraps of food, old buildings with intricate details. Each drawing showed a keen eye for detail and real artistic skill. "These are amazing, Lily. Have you ever had any formal training?" "Some," she said quietly. "I took art classes in high school. My foster mom thought it might help me stay out of trouble." "Foster mom?" Lily's face tightened slightly. "Yeah, I was in the system from age 12 until I turned 18 8 months ago. That's when I aged out and ended up here." Thomas felt his chest tighten. She was so young, and she'd been dealing with this alone for almost a year. "What happened to your parents?" "Car accident when I was 12. No other family willing to take me in." Lily's voice was matter-of-fact, but Thomas could hear the old pain underneath. "I bounced around between different foster homes for 6 years. Some were okay, some weren't. My last foster family was actually pretty good. Mrs. Rodriguez encouraged my drawing and made sure I stayed in Shiro. Ool. Why didn't you stay with them after you turned 18? They already had 3 other foster kids and were taking in another." There wasn't room, and honestly, I didn't want to be a burden. I thought I'd figure things out on my own. Lily let out a bitter laugh. Turns out being independent is harder than I expected. Thomas sat down on the cold sidewalk next to her, not caring what it might do to his expensive suit. What have you been doing for work? Odd jobs here and there. I cleaned offices for a while, but that company lost their contract. I've done some babysitting, helped people move, sold some of my drawings to tourists down by the waterfront. Nothing steady, though. Hard to get a real job when you don't have an address or a place to shower regularly. Where do you sleep? Different places. There's a shelter across town, but it fills up fast and you can't stay during the day. Sometimes I sleep in the park when the weather's decent. There's a 24-hour laundromat that lets me wash up in their bathroom if I buy some soap. From the vending machine, Thomas felt something shift inside his chest as he listened to her matter-of-fact description of homelessness. Here was this intelligent, talented young woman, and she was living on the streets through no fault of her own. The system had failed her, and she was too proud to beg for help. Lily, he said carefully, what if I told you I might have a job for you? Her green eyes sharpened with interest but also wariness. What kind of job? I need someone to help clean my apartment. Nothing weird or inappropriate, he added quickly, seeing her expression. Just regular housekeeping, dusting, vacuuming, organizing. Maybe twice a week. The pay would be fair and it's completely legitimate work. Lily stared at him for a long moment. Why would you offer me a job? You don't know anything about me. I know you're intelligent, honest, and hardworking. Yesterday you could have lied and said you'd read dozens of books to try to impress me. Instead, you were genuine about loving one book enough to read it 3 times. You turned down my money at first because you have pride, and these drawings tell me you have incredible attention to detail. You don't know if I'm trustworthy. I could steal from you, Thomas smiled. Could you? Lily met his eyes steadily. No, I couldn't, but you don't know that. Actually, I think I do. Tell me, have you ever stolen anything since you've been on the streets? No, Lily said immediately. Not even when you were hungry? Not even something small? No. My foster mom, Mrs. Rodriguez, always said that once you start taking things that aren't yours, it becomes easier to take bigger things. She said your character is who you are when no one's watching. Thomas nodded. Smart woman. So what do you say? I'll pay you $20 an hour cash. My place isn't huge, so it shouldn't take more than 3 or 4 hours each time. Lily was quiet for so long that Thomas wondered if he'd offended her somehow. Finally, she spoke. Can I ask why you're really doing this? Honestly? I'm not entirely sure. Yesterday when I got home, I kept thinking about our conversation. You reminded me that there are good people in this world going through hard times, and sometimes we can help each other out. My apartment could use some attention and you need steady work. It seems like it could benefit both of us. And you're not expecting anything else? Thomas understood her concern and was glad she was being cautious. Absolutely not. This is strictly about housekeeping. I travel for business a lot, so most of the time you'd be working while I'm not even there. You'd have keys and full access to do your job, but it's just cleaning, nothing more. Lily looked down at her notebook, then back at Thomas. I've never been inside a rich person's house before. What if I break something expensive? Then we'll figure it out. Everyone breaks things sometimes. The important thing is doing your best. When would I start? How about tomorrow? I could show you around the place, explain what needs to be done. We could start with just one day and see how it goes for both of us. Lily took a deep breath. Okay, I'll try it. But if either of us feels uncomfortable with the arrangement, we call it off. No hard feelings. Deal, Thomas said, standing up and extending his hand. Lily shook it firmly. What time tomorrow? How's 10 in the morning? I'll meet you here and we can go up together. I'll be here, Lily said. Then she looked down at herself. I should probably warn you, I don't exactly have work clothes. What you're wearing is fine. We're just cleaning, not attending a business meeting. As Thomas walked back to his office, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Genuine excitement about helping someone. For the first time in months, he was looking forward to tomorrow. The next morning, Thomas found himself checking his watch every few minutes. At exactly 10 o'clock, he looked out his office window and saw Lily waiting by the building entrance. She'd clearly made an effort to look presentable. Her hair was pulled back neatly, and she carried a small backpack that probably contained everything she owned. When Thomas met her downstairs, he noticed she looked nervous but determined. Ready for this? he asked as they stepped into the elevator. As ready as I can be, Lily replied, watching the floor numbers climb. I've never been this high up in a building before. The elevator opened directly into Thomas's penthouse, and he watched Lily's face as she stepped inside. Her eyes went wide as she took in the floor-to-ceiling windows with their view of the entire city, the modern furniture, and the expensive artwork on the walls. Wow, she said softly. This is like something from a magazine. It's home, Thomas said, though he realized he'd never really felt that way about the place. Let me show you around. As they walked through the apartment, Thomas found himself seeing it through Lily's eyes. The living room with its leather furniture and glass coffee table, the kitchen with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances that he rarely used because he usually ordered takeout, the study lined with books he'd bought but never had time to read. The master bedroom with its king-sized bed and walk-in closet full of expensive suits. It's beautiful, Lily said, but it feels kind of empty, Thomas finished. I was going to say lonely, Lily said quietly. Thomas was surprised by how accurate that observation was. Despite all his expensive possessions, the apartment had always felt more like a hotel room than a home. So what exactly needs to be cleaned? Lily asked, getting down to business. Honestly, I have a cleaning service that comes once a month for the deep cleaning, but I could use help with the day-to-day stuff. Dusting, organizing, maybe some light vacuuming. I travel a lot for work, and when I'm home, I tend to just drop things wherever and deal with it later. Lily nodded and opened her backpack, pulling out a pair of worn rubber gloves and a small notebook. Do you mind if I make some notes about what you'd like done? I want to make sure I do this right. Of course. And Lily, don't be afraid to move things around if it makes more sense. I'm not attached to how things are arranged. For the next 4 hours, Thomas worked in his study while Lily cleaned. Every so often, he'd hear her moving around quietly, but she was so unobtrusive that he sometimes forgot she was there. When she knocked on his study door at 2 o'clock, he was amazed at how quickly the time had passed. I'm finished for today, she said. Could you take a look and let me know if everything's okay? Thomas walked through his apartment and couldn't believe what he saw. Everything was spotless, but that wasn't what impressed him most. Lily had reorganized his living room so that the furniture created better conversation areas. She'd arranged his coffee table books by color and size, creating an attractive display. In the kitchen, she'd organized his cabinet so that everything was easy to find, and had left a small hand-drawn chart showing where she'd put things. But it was in his study that Thomas was truly amazed. His books, which had been randomly shoved onto shelves, were now organized by author and genre. She'd created a small reading corner by moving a comfortable chair near the window, and had arranged his magazines in neat stacks on a side table. Lily, this is incredible, Thomas said. You didn't just clean, you organized everything so much better. Lily looked pleased but tried to downplay it. I hope you don't mind that I moved things around. I just thought about how the spaces might work better. If you don't like it, I can put everything back. Are you kidding? I love it. How did you know to arrange the books this way? I spent a lot of time in libraries growing up. You learn how organization can make a space more welcoming. Lily paused. Plus, I noticed you have a lot of architecture and design books. I figured you might appreciate good use of space. Thomas looked at his bookshelves with new eyes. She was right. He did have quite a collection of books about architecture and urban planning. You have a good eye for design. I just like thinking about how spaces work, how they make people feel. Lily gathered up her cleaning supplies. Mrs. Rodriguez used to say that a well-organized space helps create a peaceful mind. As Thomas walked Lily back to the elevator, he handed her an envelope with her payment. Same time Thursday? I'll be here, Lily said. Then she hesitated. Thomas, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you actually read all those books in your study? Thomas felt embarrassed. To be honest, no. I keep meaning to, but work always gets in the way. You should start with the one about sustainable architecture. It was published last year, and the author has some really interesting ideas about how buildings can work with the environment instead of against it. Thomas blinked. You read my books while you were cleaning? Lily's face turned red. I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have. I just saw the title and couldn't help flipping through a few pages while I was dusting. It won't happen again. No, it's fine. I'm just impressed that you found something interesting in a pretty technical book. Architecture fascinates me, Lily said. The way a building is designed affects everything: how people move through it, how they feel when they're inside, how much energy it uses. Good design can make people's lives better. After Lily left, Thomas couldn't stop thinking about their conversation. He pulled the sustainability book from his shelf and started reading. 3 hours later, he was still absorbed in it, making notes in the margins and thinking about how the concepts might apply to his company's office building. Thursday came faster than expected. When Lily arrived, she seemed more comfortable, chatting easily as she worked. Thomas found himself looking forward to their brief conversations when she took breaks. "I started reading that book you recommended," he told her over coffee. Lily's face lit up. "What did you think?" "It's fascinating. I never thought about how much a building's orientation affects its energy use." "Right? And the chapter about natural lighting was amazing. The way they showed how proper window placement can reduce the need for artificial light by 60%. Thomas was impressed by how well she understood complex concepts. "Have you read other books about architecture?" "When I can find them. The public library has a decent collection." Lily paused in her dusting. "Actually, there's something I wanted to show you." She pulled out her notebook and opened it to a new drawing. It was a sketch of his living room, but she'd drawn it from a different angle, showing how the space might look with some changes. "I was thinking about your apartment," she said. "It's beautiful, but it doesn't feel like you live here. What if you moved that bookshelf over there and created a reading nook by the window? And this wall would be perfect for some personal photos or artwork that actually means something to you." Thomas studied the drawing. She'd captured not just the physical space, but somehow made it look warmer, more inviting. "This is really good, Lily. Have you ever thought about studying interior design or architecture?" Lily's expression changed, becoming guarded. "That's not really an option for someone in my situation." "Why not?" "College costs money. A lot of money. And you need a permanent address and references. And all kinds of things I don't have." Thomas wanted to argue, to tell her there were ways around those obstacles, but he could see she didn't want to talk about it. Instead, he filed the information away and changed the subject. Over the next few weeks, Thomas began to look forward to Lily's visits more than he wanted to admit. Each time she came, she left small improvements that made his apartment feel more like a home. Fresh flowers and a water glass on the kitchen counter, books arranged so their colorful spines created an attractive pattern, curtains adjusted to let in the perfect amount of light, but what impressed him most was her absolute trustworthiness. She had complete access to his apartment, including expensive electronics, cash he sometimes left lying around, and important business documents. Never once did anything go missing or get damaged. One evening, Thomas came home to find a small hand-drawn thank you note on his kitchen counter. It showed a simple sketch of his apartment building with the words, "Thank you for giving me a chance," written in careful handwriting below it. That night, as Thomas sat in the reading corner Lily had created, he realized something had changed. For the first time in years, his apartment actually felt like home. And it was all because of a homeless girl who saw possibilities where others saw only problems. 3 months had passed since Lily started working for Thomas, and their arrangement had settled into a comfortable routine. She came twice a week, always on time, always thorough, and always leaving the apartment somehow better than before. Thomas found himself scheduling his business trips around her visits, not wanting to miss their conversations about books, current events, or her observations about the city. On this particular Thursday in February, Thomas was supposed to be in Chicago for a client meeting, but the meeting had been postponed at the last minute, and he decided to work from home instead of going to the office. He was in his bedroom when he heard Lily's key in the front door. "Good morning," she called out, as she always did. Thomas was about to respond when he realized this might be a perfect opportunity. For weeks, he'd been thinking about getting Lily some art supplies as a thank you gift. He'd noticed her notebook was getting full, and the pencil she used for drawing was worn down to almost nothing, but he wasn't sure what kind of supplies to buy, or if the gesture might make her uncomfortable. He decided to wait a bit, and then ask her opinion about art materials. Maybe she could help him pick out supplies for a fictional niece. Thomas worked quietly in his bedroom for about an hour, answering emails and reviewing contracts. Around 11 o'clock, he decided to take a coffee break and see how Lily was doing. As he walked toward the kitchen, he noticed his study door was closed. That was odd. Lily always left doors open while she worked to let air circulate. He approached quietly, not wanting to startle her, and was about to knock when he heard an unusual sound. Lily was talking to herself in a low voice, but not the way people usually talk while doing chores. She sounded focused, almost professional. Thomas couldn't make out the words, but her tone reminded him of how engineers talked when they were working through a complex problem. Curious, Thomas gently pushed the door open just a crack and peered inside. What he saw made him freeze in complete shock. Lily wasn't cleaning his study. She was sitting at his desk, completely absorbed in what appeared to be technical drawings. Spread across his desk were large sheets of paper covered with detailed blueprints, mathematical calculations, and precise architectural diagrams. She had a ruler in one hand and was making careful measurements while consulting what looked like a thick textbook. But that wasn't the most shocking part. The most shocking part was what she was drawing. Thomas recognized the building in her blueprints. It was his office building, the same one where he'd first met her. But these weren't just copies of the existing structure. These were redesigned plans showing how the building could be modified to be more energy efficient. She'd drawn detailed cross-sections showing improved ventilation systems, solar panel installations, and what looked like a rainwater collection system. The level of technical detail was incredible. These weren't the sketches of a hobbyist. They were professional-grade architectural drawings that would require years of training to create. Thomas must have made a sound, because Lily suddenly looked up and saw him standing in the doorway. The expression on her face was pure terror. "Thomas," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I can explain." For a moment, neither of them moved. Lily's face had gone completely pale, and Thomas could see her hands shaking as she tried to gather up the papers. "Please don't," she said, tears starting to form in her eyes. "Please don't call the police. I know I shouldn't have used your desk. I know I overstepped. I'll leave right now and never come back." "Lily, wait," Thomas said, stepping into the room. "I'm not calling anyone, but I need you to explain what this is." Lily clutched the blueprints against her chest like she was protecting them. "You wouldn't understand. Try me." Thomas could see Lily struggling with herself, torn between running away and telling the truth. Finally, she took a shaky breath and set the papers back down on the desk. "I wasn't always homeless," she said quietly. "Before I aged out of foster care, I was a student at State University, architecture program. I was in my third year." Thomas felt like the room was spinning. "You were studying architecture?" "I had a full scholarship based on my grades and my portfolio. I was working 2 part-time jobs to pay for housing and food. My GPA was 3.9. Lily's voice was flat, like she was reciting facts that belonged to someone else's life. "I was going to graduate next year and start working at a firm downtown. I had it all planned out. What happened? When I turned 18, I aged out of the foster system. I lost my housing assistance, and even working 2 jobs, I couldn't afford rent and tuition and food. I tried to keep up with classes while sleeping in my car, but it was impossible." Lily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I had to choose between dropping out or going deeper into debt with no guarantee I could finish. So I dropped out." Thomas sank into a chair, trying to process what she was telling him. "But these drawings, when did you make these?" "I've been working on them for months. I still go to the public library every day when I'm not here. They have computers and internet access, and I've been keeping up with my coursework online. I can't take exams or get credit, but I can still learn." Lily's voice grew stronger as she talked about her work. "This building project is something I started as a way to keep my skills sharp. I know every detail of your office building because I've been studying it for almost a year." Thomas looked at the blueprints again, seeing them with new understanding. "These modifications, would they actually work? They would reduce the building's energy consumption by about 40% and cut operating costs significantly. The payback period for the initial investment would be about 7 years." Lily spoke with the confidence of someone who had done extensive research. "I've run all the calculations multiple times. How did you learn to do this level of technical work?" "Professor Martinez always said that architecture is just problem solving with math and physics. You figure out what you want a space to do, then you work backwards to make it happen." For a moment, Lily's face lit up with the passion Thomas had heard when she talked about books. Good architecture isn't just about making buildings look pretty. It's about creating spaces that work better for people and the environment. Thomas was quiet for a long moment, studying the young woman sitting at his desk. All these months, he'd thought he was helping someone who was down on her luck. He'd never imagined he was employing someone with this level of talent and education. "Lily, why didn't you tell me any of this?" "Because it doesn't matter," she said, her voice turning bitter. "It doesn't matter that I was a good student or that I understand sustainable design principles. I'm homeless. I don't have a degree. No architecture firm is going to hire someone like me. But if you could go back to school with what money? Even if I could somehow afford tuition, I'd have to start over completely. I've been out for 8 months. My scholarship is gone. My professors have probably forgotten I exist." Lily stood up and started gathering her cleaning supplies. "I should go." "Wait," Thomas said. "Don't leave." "Not yet. Why? So you can feel sorry for me?" "I don't need your pity, Thomas. I'm grateful for the work you've given me, but I don't need you to try to fix my life." "What if I told you I don't want to fix your life? What if I told you I want to learn from you?" Lily stopped packing and looked at him suspiciously. "What do you mean?" Thomas gestured to the blueprints. "You've designed something here that could save my company hundreds of thousands of dollars while helping the environment. That's not something that needs fixing. That's something that needs attention. You're not making sense." Thomas smiled for the first time since he'd walked into the room. "Lily, I think you and I need to have a very different kind of conversation than the ones we've been having." As he looked at the detailed architectural plans spread across his desk, Thomas realized that everything was about to change. The question was whether Lily was ready for that change too. Thomas spent the next hour studying Lily's architectural plans with growing amazement. Every calculation was precise. Every design element was thoughtfully planned. And every modification she'd proposed made perfect sense from both an environmental and business perspective. "Lily," he said finally, "I need you to walk me through these plans. Pretend I'm a potential client who needs to understand why these changes are worth making." Lily looked at him suspiciously. "Why?" "Because I think you might have just solved a problem that my company has been working on for 2 years." Despite her wariness, Lily couldn't resist talking about her work. She moved to stand beside Thomas at the desk and began explaining her designs with growing enthusiasm. "See this section here?" she said, pointing to a detailed cross-section. "The current HVAC system is fighting against the building's natural airflow patterns. By adding these vents and redirecting the ductwork, you can reduce energy consumption by 30% just from better air circulation." Thomas nodded, impressed by how clearly she explained complex concepts. "What about this solar panel arrangement? Most buildings just slap solar panels on the roof wherever they fit. But if you look at the sun's path throughout the day and the shadows cast by surrounding buildings, you can position them for maximum efficiency. I calculated that this arrangement would generate 22% more power than a standard installation." For 20 minutes, Lily walked Thomas through every aspect of her redesign. She explained water collection systems, improved insulation techniques, and smart lighting solutions that would respond to natural light levels throughout the day. Each idea was backed up with research, calculations, and real-world examples from buildings around the world. When she finished, Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone. "What are you doing?" Lily asked nervously. "Calling my business partner," Thomas said. "I want him to see this." "Thomas, no. Please don't involve other people in this. I just want to keep working and stay out of trouble." "Lily, you don't understand. My company has been hired to design a sustainable renovation for 3 office buildings downtown. We've been struggling to find solutions that are both environmentally effective and cost-efficient. You've just shown me designs that are better than anything our team has come up with." Before Lily could protest further, Thomas's call connected. "David, it's Thomas. I know it's your day off, but I need you to come to my apartment. I have something to show you that's going to change how we approach the Morrison project." An hour later, David Peterson, Thomas's business partner and head of their engineering department, was standing in Thomas's study staring at Lily's blueprints with his mouth open. "Who designed these?" David asked. Thomas gestured to Lily, who was sitting in the corner looking like she wanted to disappear. "This is Lily. She's been working on this project on her own time." David looked at Lily with new interest. "Are you an architect?" "I was studying architecture," Lily said quietly. "I didn't finish my degree." "Where did you study?" "State University. I was in the 3rd-year program before I had to drop out." David nodded knowingly. "Professor Martinez's program?" "I know her work." Tough curriculum, but she turns out excellent students. He turned back to the blueprints. These calculations for the thermal efficiency improvements. Did you do these yourself? Yes, sir. They're perfect. I mean, I'd need to double-check them, but just looking at the methodology, it's exactly how I would approach the problem. David looked at Thomas. Where did you find her? Thomas realized this was the moment that would determine everything. He could make up some story about meeting Lily through professional channels. Or he could tell the truth and trust that David would see what he saw. Someone with extraordinary talent who deserved a chance. I met her 8 months ago. She was homeless, living on the street outside our building. I hired her to help with housekeeping, and today I discovered she's been working on these designs in her spare time. David's eyebrows went up, but to his credit, he didn't look shocked or dismissive. And you've been studying architecture on your own since you left school? At the public library, Lily said. They have computers and internet access. I've been following online courses and reading everything I can find about sustainable design. That's incredible dedication, David said. He studied the plans again. Lily, what would you say if I told you these designs could be worth millions of dollars in energy savings across multiple buildings? I'd say that was the whole point, Lily replied. Good architecture should pay for itself by making buildings work better. David laughed. Spoken like a true architect. He turned to Thomas. We need to talk. While David and Thomas stepped into the hallway to confer privately, Lily sat alone in the study, staring at her drawings and trying to process what was happening. She'd spent months working on these plans as a way to keep her mind sharp and hold on to hope that someday she might return to architecture. She'd never imagined they might actually be useful to anyone. When Thomas and David returned, they both looked serious but excited. Lily, Thomas said, we have a proposition for you. But before we make it, I need to ask you something important. If you could go back to school and finish your architecture degree, would you want to? Of course I would want to, Lily said. But wanting something and being able to do it are different things. What if the obstacles weren't there? What if you had a way to pay for school and housing and everything else you needed? Lily looked between the two men suspiciously. What are you talking about? David spoke up. My company has a program where we sponsor promising students in exchange for them working with us part-time during school and full-time for 2 years after graduation. It's designed for exactly situations like this. Talented people who need financial support to complete their education. You're talking about me? Lily's voice was barely a whisper. We're talking about offering you a full scholarship to complete your architecture degree, plus a living stipend, plus part-time work at our firm where you can gain practical experience, Thomas said. In exchange, you'd work with us on projects like the building renovations you've designed here. Lily stared at them in disbelief. Why would you do this? Because you're brilliant, David said simply. Because you've shown more innovation in these plans than most of our senior architects show in a year. Because talent like yours shouldn't be wasted. But I'm nobody, Lily said. I'm homeless. I don't have references or connections or any of the things that matter in business. You have something better, Thomas said. You have vision, dedication, and the ability to see solutions where others see problems. 8 months ago, I thought I was helping you by giving you a job cleaning my apartment. But the truth is, you've been helping me this whole time. You've made my apartment feel like a home. You've opened my eyes to ideas I never would have considered. And now you've potentially solved our biggest business challenge. Lily was quiet for a long time, tears streaming down her face. Finally, she looked up at both men. If I say yes and this doesn't work out, I'll have nothing to fall back on. At least now I have a job and a place to stay occasionally. If you say yes and it doesn't work out, you'll still have learned more and gained experience that no one can take away from you, David said. But I don't think it won't work out. I think you're going to be an exceptional architect. Thomas nodded. Besides, you'll still have a friend who believes in you, no matter what happens. And 6 months later, Thomas stood in the back of a university lecture hall, watching Lily present her sustainable building design to a panel of professors and industry professionals. She'd aced all her readmission exams, caught up on the coursework she'd missed, and was now one of the top students in her program. Her presentation was flawless. She explained her innovations with confidence and passion, fielding questions from experts with the ease of someone who had truly mastered her subject. When the presentation ended, and Lily was surrounded by professors offering praise and potential job opportunities, Thomas slipped out quietly. He didn't need to stay for the accolades. He'd already seen the most important transformation. As he walked back to his car, Thomas reflected on how a simple act of curiosity had changed both their lives. He'd gained not just a talented employee, but a true friend who had taught him that sometimes the most extraordinary people are hiding in the most ordinary places, waiting for someone to notice their potential. And Lily had gained something even more valuable than a career. She'd gained the knowledge that her dreams were not just possible, but inevitable, as long as she had the courage to pursue them. Sometimes the best discoveries come not from looking for something new, but from truly seeing what was already there all along.